Welcome everyone to Firefly Grill and Lakeside Table's Scallop Risotto cooking class. We are so excited to have all of you here. Scallop Risotto is one of the most requested recipes we get from Firefly. It seems like it's one of the, just our most popular dishes, and we do it so many different ways throughout the year. So, usually we start with the traditional Parmesan Risotto, which you'll be seeing today with the roasted mushrooms and the English. But we also do it with sweet corn and butternut squash. And then Madeline's doing a little bit of a different recipe today, so her play on risotto. So we're really excited to have her with us. She's one of our favorites and actually did a stage with us. Was that end of last year, Madeline?
Did a what last year? Oh, an internship with you guys.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. That was about 6-7 months ago. It was last August, September.
Awesome. So we love Madeline, and we're so excited to have her today. Just a couple technical stuff just for you guys. So make sure that you are in speaker view, and you can see that in the top right-hand corner of your screen. You'll have gallery view or speaker view. You will want to stay in speaker view. As Niall and Madeline go back and forth, whoever is talking, their video will be big on your screen. So make sure you stay in speaker view, and then you will be muted and have no video throughout the presentation today. But if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat area of Zoom, and I will make sure to ask them for you. So keep the questions coming. They love them, so keep them coming. Other than that, I will hand it over to Chef Madeline. She will be starting the process today.
Hey guys. Okay, so with risotto, it's now the thing that Niall and I are going to do. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, is that I'm going to make it from beginning all the way through, and then Niall is going to share his tips and tricks and has some risotto that he's going to start, and then he has some finished as well. So I'm going to kind of do a little play on both. So first thing to do with your risotto is I have about 1.5, 2 tablespoons of butter in my pot. And I'm going to go ahead and start with about 1/2 of an onion that's already been small diced, and about 3 stalks of celery that are diced as well. And these are super small dice. And then I'm going to go ahead and heat this and give it a stir. And then once the onion is translucent but not brown, then I'll add the arborio rice, which is a very short grain rice, and then I'll give that about a minute, and then I'll start adding in the stock. So while I'm waiting for the vegetables to get a little soft, Niall, why don't you go ahead and pick up from here?
Sure. So hi everybody. One of the things that I recognized through the last one that we did for Eggs Benedict was that I felt like I was moving really, really fast. And that happens mostly because of 30 years of working in a kitchen. So do me a favor, and if you need me to slow down, just shoot. I don't know how to do it, but I'm sure there's a way to I think it's through chat or something, let Katie know, just slow down, Niall. But I'm gonna work on slowing down, but if I'm still moving too quickly, just let me know. Very similar to Madeline, I'm going to start out the same way. I have a very similar pot. Now, one of the things I do is when I'm first getting started, I kind of use a little bit of a low quality olive oil because like Madeline said, I'm not going to hit a really high smoke point with this. So it's a couple of tablespoons of olive oil. And I'm going to add my onions here. And as Madeline was saying, you want to make sure that you don't want to brown your onions. You just basically want to make them translucent. I was over at Firefly earlier this morning, and so I'm going to be using a lot of kind of funky different garnishes today. Our nasturtiums are really popping off, and so we're going to be using some of those. But here in this beginning set, we've got some beautiful thyme flowers, and this is lemon thyme. So I'm just going to hit a little bit of lemon thyme flower into there also. And like Madeline, I'm going to start my pot. So there's a couple of different methods for this part. One of which is for your chicken stock. You can heat it, but you can also add it cold. Heating it increases cook time probably by about 5 or 6%. So what I'm going to say is I'm just going to throw heat underneath my chicken stuff. Like Madeline said, she is going to take the process from beginning to end. Now, one of the things about risotto is it's very labor intensive. And so what you're really looking to do is knock the starch out of the rice. Some of the old classic risotto pots used to actually have, they would slope at the end and then they would have almost a V cut to them. And so as you work it, they would throw the risotto into the air, and as the risotto comes back down, they would put a wooden spoon and it would land over the top of the wooden spoon. And the goal is to crack the germ. And so that's the starch that you're looking for. And you know, there's a few different types of rice. There's actually a Spanish version of arborio, but you know, most commonly used in Italian cooking and you know for risotto is arborio. So we use an arborio super fino. So my onions and my thyme are starting right now. I've set out, I think I got a cup here of arborio rice. So my goal today is I'll show you how I get it started, and then I'll also show you how to stop it. So you can actually bring risotto to a certain point in which the germ is not completely broke. A lot of the starch is released. However, if you're having a dinner party, instead of taking the risotto from A to B, which can be a 35-40 minute ordeal, you can basically bring it for about 30 to 35 minutes. And at that point, pull it off and cool it, and then finish it. And so that's really what I'll be working with you all today on, is finishing it. Really important, highly recommend 2 utensils. One is a wooden spoon. So this spoon, when I throw my rice in, I give it just a little bit of a toast. So we're lightly toasting the rice. You don't want to overcook it. You don't want to make it too hot. And just remember that cooking really is all about time and temperature. And so if you're cooking too fast, I always try to teach new cooks this. You can actually turn it down. There's a control knob on most equipment that you can actually just turn it down a little bit, and it will slow it down. So you don't need to be having to race and hurry in the second. Something like risotto is something that's time honored. It's a slow cooking process. There's no reason to hurry anything. So basically I've got a little bit of a toast going here. I'm going to take just a bit of white wine. Number one, that cools it a little bit, that adds a bit of flavor. And then I'm going to start working the risotto. And so that's going to come to a simmer. And while that's coming to a simmer, I'm going to turn it back over to Madeline. And I'm going to start working some other things, and then I'll pick up after her.
Awesome. Okay, so like Niall, I did the same thing. I went ahead and put in the risotto and gave it a light toast, probably no more than 1 minute, maybe 2. It's a very quick toast. You're not trying to brown the rice. You're just trying to coat it with the oil, and that also helps protect the rice kernel so that it doesn't cook too fast and get mushy, because you're still looking for a little bit of an al dente with your rice, but it should also be creamy. So that's what that initial toast process does for your risotto. And then one of the things too, I put in maybe 2 cloves of garlic, because I love garlic. And if Jerry didn't give me such a hard time, I would probably throw in 5 cloves of garlic. But because I really like my husband, I'm not going to do that. So I just held back to 2 cloves of garlic. And garlic and onions cook at different temperatures. So typically, if I'm doing a saute, which is real high heat with a little bit of fat, I'll put the onions in first and then the garlic, because I don't want to burn it. But with risotto, because you're doing it at a medium-low simmer, you don't need to worry about that. So you can put in your onion and your garlic at the same time, which is really nice. So I've got hot chicken broth back here, which I put in about a half cup to maybe 3/4 of a cup of white wine, and a little bit later to slip on as I get tongue-tied. And then it's just a nice light stirring process with the risotto. 1 scoop or 1 ladle at a time with your broth, whether it's hot or cold. And now, can you tell me, what was the difference again about using a cold broth versus a hot broth when you're doing risotto?
So, you know, the hot broth decreases the cook time. So you'll have a little bit more time on the other end of your risotto, about 5 to 6%. So that basically means that when it's hot, it takes a little less time to cook than if you were to use cold stock. So it's meager, but you can use regular temperature, room temperature, or cold stock. It's all fine.
Nice.
It will just slow the cooking process a little bit.
Nice. Yeah, and as far as your chicken broth to rice, do you use like 1 cup of rice to 3 cups of chicken stock, or 4 cups, or 2? What's your broth to rice ratio?
You know, it's really funny. We were talking the other day, Madeline, and usually we always have chicken stock hot, and so a lot of times it's by eye. So what I did this time is I warmed about twice the amount of chicken stock than rice, because you're going to lose some during evaporation. And then for finishing, I always like a little extra chicken stock at the end. However, you know, for vegetarians and stuff like that, you can use veg stock. I don't believe it gets quite as creamy. The reason is because it doesn't have the gelatin in the stock. You can counter that with some leeks. There's a couple of other vegetables out there that will throw a little bit of starch content into the liquid, so you can always use veg stock. I've seen people make red wine risotto, so when they start out the cooking process, they actually use red wine. I mean, there's a lot of different variations, but this is kind of I would say, a pretty classic Parmesan risotto.
Nice, nice. I think one of the mistakes that people make too when they're making risotto is that they feel like they have to stir it nonstop for a half an hour, for 20 minutes. And I think it needs a little bit of a break, because when I've done that, I've made that mistake before, and I've turned up with something like chew gum. It just ended up falling apart and not maintaining that little al dente bit at the end, and it turned into like oatmeal mush. And so I think by giving it a little bit of a break and not still stirring it, making sure it doesn't burn on the bottom, but stirring it enough to get the starches bouncing around with the rice kernels, it helps, but not over stirring. Have you found that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can let it, like if, definitely want to come over here with that. So I'm actually working mine, there you go. I'm working mine right now, and I like to keep it moving and breaking, but it's still, you know, I take it almost to like where the liquid has been evaporated, and then I'll add just a little bit more chicken stock. So, I mean, a
little bit of a slowdown.
Right. And the nice thing is one of the things that I wanted to show also is that risotto, if you're planning on like a dinner party, or even if you're just cooking for the family, you can actually make large batches of risotto and then just cool it, and then put it into a container and then wrap it tight or put a lid on it. And that risotto, you could just grab it out of the refrigerator like the next night, and you could pick it up from that stage. And so that's the stage that I really want to bring everybody to, because it makes it much, much easier to pick it up, because from the stage in which I'm going to bring it, it only takes about 7 minutes to actually bring it to full-on risotto. And so it just makes it a lot easier. That's kind of the trick that we use in the restaurant, in order to be able to, you know, I think some nights we put up like 100 orders of risotto. And so, you know, you only have about 7 to 10 minutes to be able to pick that dish up. And so it's one of the tricks that we use in the restaurant to be able to give high quality risotto, but also in a timely fashion. So, so actually, I'm working this risotto right now, and it's very similar. Madeline is going to go coast to coast on this. And so what I want to show you is...
1 second. I do have somebody asking, what temperature should the burner be on?
Currently, mine is on low. because
Mine is too.
I'm using hot chicken stock. I'm not going to lose any temperature through the cooking process. So my chicken stock is on medium, and my risotto is on low. So
Thank
it's a
you.
slow process. Take the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And after you put in a ladle of the chicken stock, you want to cook it until you can just take your spoon through it, and then you can start to see the bottom of your pan. And then you know that you're ready for your next ladle of chicken stock. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's perfect, Madeline.
Perfect.
I also have one question. I know we haven't gotten to this part yet, but someone was asking about purchasing scallops. They want to know if they use an online seafood vendor, or do you lose a lot of flavor if it's frozen? What are your recommendations there?
So I'll have a diatribe that will on scallops. Being from Maine, I hold seafood in a crazy high regard, and so it's really important to me for two things on scallops. Number one, to use dry scallops. So that means they didn't use the sodium weird liquid when they were packing. A lot of the vendors do that in order to increase life on them. But I prefer dry pack scallops. They cook much better. But once we get to the scallops, I'll kind of go through all of that. I actually, because Firefly shut down right now, I actually ordered these in from a company out of Maine called Maine Lobster Now. And so, needless to say, I actually had them flown in overnight through FedEx. A couple of things I just wanted to touch on. We're going to work a couple of different risottos. But this is the stage that I was talking about. So what you're looking for, and I would like to say it's a time thing, but it's more of a feel thing. So what I've got here is I've got risotto rice that was cooked. I think it was maybe 35 or maybe 40 minutes. Here, I'm going to drop this sage into this brown butter real quick. It's a really nice garnish for it. But we'll get to that in just a second. So this here is basically the stage that I'm looking for. And if you take that grain of rice, the germ is still intact. And so the goal is that the outer of the rice will smash to bits, however, leaving a stiff germ. So when I press on this, all that's left is that germ. And hopefully you can see that. So when you smash on the rice, it's almost translucent. So when you look, you can almost see through the rice, and then it will just leave that tough germ in there. And so that's the stage that I cook it to. And then basically what I do is I pour it onto this sheet pan, and I make it as thin as possible to reduce clumps so that it cools evenly. And then I cut checker patterns through this in order to allow for more cold to get to the rice. And then I immediately take this and I throw it into the freezer. Do yourself a favor, don't forget it in there. But I throw it into the freezer for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'll make sure that it's cool to the touch, and then I throw it into the refrigerator. At this point, this risotto can be packed. And so what I mean by that is you can just pick it right up off from here. You can see how sticky and starchy it is. The liquid that was coming from this was pretty spectacular, because that's really what you're looking for. It's almost a rice porridge.
And so Niall, you had cooked that for how long before you put it in the pan like that?
I go by I go by feel. So about 30 minutes.
Okay, so that's a finished risotto right there.
No, this has about a 7 to 10 minute pickup time on it.
Okay.
And like I said, the big thing is it's more about feel than it is about time, because you're never guaranteed time. And so it's more about you get to the stage where that rice kernel, the actual germ that's inside of it, everything's translucent except for the germ. And when you press on that rice kernel, the only thing that's left is the germ. And so needless to say, this is about 5 to 10 minutes away from being a finished product. And so that's where I'm going to take you now, is to the finished product. while I'm getting this stuff set up, Madeline, where are you at?
Well, I've got probably about 3 or 4 more ladles of chicken broth. And I just did the kernel test that you did. And my risotto is probably about 10, 12 minutes from being done. And you could, when I pinched it, when I pressed it down on the wooden spoon, you could really feel, I could really feel that hard center. And I could tell that it wasn't nearly done yet. So that's a brilliant little technique, and you can do that all throughout the process to see and to check without. I mean, it's wonderful to taste it, 5 or 6 or 15 times. But if you don't want to eat all your risotto, before it's done, yeah.
Madeline, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. We have someone asking about the asparagus for your recipe.
Okay.
They steam it first. Should they do that now while they're waiting for their broth to absorb?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, absolutely. So I took my asparagus, and I think that the little heads are super cute, so I leave those a little on the longer side. And then the rest of it, I do probably about a centimeter or maybe a little longer. Just something that is bite-sized and something that's easy to pick up and eat. And this is raw. So sometimes if people are trying to rush their risotto, which never turns out well, there might be a tendency to throw your vegetables in the beginning with your rice. And the longer you can wait to throw your vegetables in to the very end, like until maybe your last ladle. If you're working with frozen peas, you definitely, maybe your last ladle, maybe if you have 2 ladles of chicken broth left to do, then you could throw in your frozen peas, because that's going to slow the process down, and the risotto will need to heat back up in order to cook down the peas. But with something like with the asparagus, since this is raw and it's still a soft vegetable. Like if you're using zucchini or summer squash, you can definitely fold that in at the very end too, especially if you're going to do something like a primavera. And so yeah, we are just coming along. So this is a perfect time to go ahead and cut up your asparagus. Just make sure that you're continuing to stir your risotto, about at least once a minute, every 30 seconds, so that it doesn't burn on the bottom. Hey, Niall, is there a particular pan that you find most helpful? Can a pan be too wide or too deep, or does that matter at all?
Whichever's clean. No. So I like to have, when I'm working risotto, I like to have something that has at least 6 to 8 inch sides. So it's difficult to work risotto from coast to coast in a pan, because you're putting energy into it. And so, you don't want to slop it all over the place. So generally, like, something along these lines are fine for a small batch. And then, this is a taller sided pan. But, basically they're like little stock pots. I've been in the market for the traditional risotto pots, which, like I said, they're very cool. They have like a V-neck in them. And when you swoop, the risotto will actually make its way out of the pan, and then, you drop it back over it's a technique that I would love to learn.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice.
So I'm going to jump into, I've got a couple of garnishes that I'm working right now. One of which is super easy and is really nice for a lot of different applications. So this is a German variety of sage. And so what I've done is I've actually browned some butter, and I've slowly cooked these into sage chips. So they're brown butter, basically brown butter sage chips. And so when they're done, they will be crispy like a potato chip. And it's a very stout
And that's not difficult to do, is it, Niall?
No, super easy, super easy. And it's like making a potato chip, and you know, the brown butter is nice because it's good and nutty, and the sage just lends a great flavor to it. Now the oil that's left over from there makes for great cooking too, because sage has been imparted into a brown butter. So it's nutty and it's sagey and it's earthy. It's really quite nice. And actually, I'm actually kind of at the point now. So funny, I keep saying actually. My daughter's in this thing about saying actually, so now I say actually all the time. So weird.
Hey, at least she's not saying like, Niall.
No, yeah, right. I think actually is the new like. It seems to be the pause word. Mine, it was always but actually. So where I'm at now, this is kind of the cool thing on this is a lot of times if you're making risotto from coast to coast, that means everything else has to chase the risotto. And what I mean by that is I want my risotto to a point where it's not, I don't have to rush through the risotto because it takes a lot of time and energy. And so I want to bring my risotto to a place where I can focus on the other ingredients that are being imparted. So what I'm going to do now is I have both of the risottos. I took it off in the pan and put it into pots. Now, when you get to this point, there is a utensil out there, and it's called a spatula. So it literally is called a spatula. And so what that means is it's a spatula, but it's a spoon at the same time. You can see on a traditional spatula, which this is my daughter's Grinch spatula, you can see it's just flat and it doesn't have a cup. This has a small cup in it. So this is the best to rework. When you're reworking risotto, this is the best utensil. I'm going to set that aside. Now, I have a pan that's incredibly hot right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be searing scallops. These are 10-20 scallops. So one of the things about scallops is 10-20, U10, U8, 30-40. So what those numbers mean are these are 10-20s. So that means for every pound of scallops, there is 10 to 20 per pound. That means the average catch is 15. So basically, that means there's 15 scallops per 1 pound. So every 16 ounces, basically you have 1 ounce scallops if you do the math backwards. So U10s means under 10 per pound. U8s mean under 8 per pound. When you get into U10s and U8s, my recommendation is to always cut them in half. And the reason is because unless you're doing crudo, it's just much easier to cook a 10-20 scallop. Anything smaller than this becomes almost difficult to cook also because you can overcook them. And so the other thing is, I think we talked about dry pack and wet pack. You always want to go for a dry pack scallop. Obviously, we live in the Midwest, so it's difficult. So sometimes if you have to use frozen scallops, such is life. But my recommendation is, you know, when you're eating seafood, you generally don't know how long that's been frozen. You don't know how long you don't know the journey of its life. So these are 10-20s. I've already seasoned them with just a bit of salt. And so my pan's pretty hot right about now. And so that's what you want to sear scallops. So scallops have a ton of natural sugars in them. And so I'm actually just going to start dropping my scallops down.
And now when you do your scallops, do you do them in olive oil, butter, canola oil, a mixture? What do you do?
I prefer canola oil. It's a high smoke. It doesn't lend all that much flavor because I'm really looking to get as much of the sea flavor out of the scallops as possible.
Nice. I want to take a step back. Somebody asked earlier about what your temperature of the broth and what temperature is the risotto on. And I'm with Niall. I think a lot of it is feel. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to control your dial on your stove and not be afraid to turn it up, turn it down, turn it up, turn it down. And as long as you are getting a medium simmer so that you're always seeing the little boiling bubbles around your risotto, but when they start to speed up, you can turn it back down. If you've turned it down too much and you're not getting any simmer at all, meaning that your liquid is smooth and not boiling or bubbling, turn the heat back up.
Madeline, can you go over how you cut the asparagus one more time whenever you get a chance? We just had a couple questions about that.
Sure. So when asparagus has a real woodsy end, about the last 2 to 3 inches of the asparagus is super woody and fibrous and tough. And so you just want to go ahead and completely eliminate that. What I like to do with those woody ends is usually there's a rubber band, and I keep the rubber band around them. I wrap them up in the plastic bag that I've gotten, that I put it in at the grocery store, and I put it in the freezer. And that's a wonderful thing to use for vegetable stocks or vegetable soups that you are then going to drain out. So you can reserve those and use them, and it's great. So, but if you don't want to do that, pitch them. And then go ahead and cut the little tops of your asparagus off. And then chop up the rest of the stem to little bite-sized pieces. So I like to do super small pieces that are just a little bit bigger than a pea, because I'm using peas as well. If you like to do your asparagus up to 1 inch, you can certainly do that. So I would do either little bitty or up to 1 inch, but not much bigger than that. How's that sound? That answer the question?
You're the best. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to go ahead and test my risotto. I'm getting my pan hot over here as well for the scallops. One of the things when I first started cooking, I was super scared to use any pan that was not a non-stick pan. And I thought, oh my gosh, the world is going to end if I have to use a stainless steel, because everything will stick to it. It'll be a mess. I can't clean it up. These are by far, I think, the best pans to get a good sear, whether you're trying to sear a chicken, scallops, steak, what have you. And the great thing about it is that once it gets hot and you add your oil, and you let your oil get hot before you add your dry protein. So you want to make sure that your scallops are dried and salted, and then put into the hot oil. And the cool thing, the magic thing about a stainless steel pan like this, when it's hot and the oil's hot and then the protein goes in, is that when the protein starts to release off the pan, when it gets that beautiful golden brown sear. Am I on track with that, Niall?
Well, it's funny. We like to talk about sear camp. We look for like a really good sear at Firefly, and if you achieve it, we always like to say, wow, it looks like somebody just came back from sear camp. So, it's that high heat, and then actually, Stephanie, will bring that over here. So if you take a look, we have a really nice sear going on these scallops right now. And actually what I'm going to do is the butter that I had from the sage. So I have sage imparted into that brown butter. So brown butter is a cooking stage in which kind of the butter begins to taste incredibly nutty. I'm actually going to take a little bit of that fat and just finish the scallops with it. And a pretty classic technique that we use at the restaurant a lot is called butter basting. And so you can see that butter. Oh my goodness! If you could smell this right now, it is silly good.
Amazing.
So you can just take that butter, you create a well in the bottom of the pan, and you just drop the butter down over the top of the scallops, and that will help them finish out. It also imparts flavor to them. The other thing that I also I kind of got away there for a second, but when you season your scallops, you season the upside, and then you put them into your pan. Don't forget to season the other side. Make sure it's seasoned all the way through. So basically what we're looking at right now is a really, really nicely seared, butter braised scallop. Now, what I'm going to do... That
looks so good.
My mouth is
coming together.
watering.
So one of the things that I just want you guys to know is, don't try this at home, but so this is just a little bit of the liquid that came from the scallops. So it's the butter, it's the sage, I want to make sure that everything is seasoned properly, and this is a good place to test it because all this liquid is imparted in this pan. So if you take a little bit of it out and then you just put your finger in it, it's gonna be hot, and you taste it, it's good. It does need a little bit of salt though. So I'm just gonna finish that up just by doing that. Now, a lot like steak, scallops also need to rest. I never recommend eating scallops super, super hot that you burn your mouth. Unless you're at like a fried food joint or something that has fried scallops. But I like to take them out and I like to let the scallop rest because basically I've cooked them to about medium rare to medium, and so they're gonna rest to being finished to about 155 degrees, 140 degrees, something like that. So I'm just gonna let them rest on that wood. And while that's happening, I want you to take a look. So I've got the risotto in the pan, and as I stated before, we're just gonna bring the temperature back onto these. It's all been cooled. And so this is a great stage to be at because it allows you to be pretty free. What I'm gonna do too is I'm a little low on chicken stock, so I'm gonna use effing stock. Wherever you are, if you're in Marion County, we call it Marion stock. If we're in Chicago, we call it Chicago stock. But basically a little effing stock, a little water to basically reconstitute this.
Hey, I just want to jump in real quick. I'm
Sure.
going to have, I've got one more ladle of chicken stock to pour in. And so I'm putting in my peas and asparagus into the risotto so they can cook for like the last 5 minutes in the hot broth. And I've got the scallops going. I'm using a canola oil as well. And then I'll finish it off with brushing with butter to help that golden brown. And we are getting all sorts of things. It is really coming together nicely.
Quick
I
question.
can go ahead.
How long should they sear the scallops on each side?
So the thing, until they're cooked.
Spoken like a true chef.
Right.
That was the hardest. I think about 3 to 5 minutes, but Niall's right. When you start seeing the golden brown edges on the bottom of the scallop, and then the scallops will start to release from the pan. So when they can easily come up off the pan is a really nice way to know that they're ready. And typically I think it's like, depending on how hot your pan is, maybe about 3 to 4 minutes. And
Thank you so much.
that was one of the most craziest things that when I started culinary school, I thought, oh, I'm going to get all the secret times and I'm going to know exactly how long to bake things and to roast things. No, the main answer that every one of my professors said was, you cook it until it's done. There was no time. You cook it until it's done.
And
When
it's got to be perfect.
Exactly.
Not only done, but perfect.
Exactly. Golden brown and delicious. All right.
Right. Go
one
ahead,
thing I like.
Madeline.
Oh, sorry. One thing that I like to do with scallops and chicken, and let's see, we're right here, is that I'll put the scallops in the pan at 12 o'clock and then go around clockwise so I'll know where I started and which one to flip first. So.
Wow, what a great tip, Madeline. That's amazing.
Oh, there we go. We're getting there. And if you catch something on fire, that's okay too. There's usually a sink nearby.
Fire is good.
Fire is awesome.
All right, Madeline. Those are beautiful.
There we go. Nice. The hardest thing about doing a good sear or saute is letting the pan do the work and just leave it alone. Let it sear, let it do its thing without touching it and flipping it. Just let it do its thing. All right. So where are you at, Niall?
So I'm just at the point where I'm at the point, basically I added a little bit of liquid. You can kind of see I'm at the consistency that I'm looking for. Now when I take this piece of rice I'm going to press it down. And there's really not much except for that little bit of germ. So I'm about 2 minutes away from being done. So this is the point in which I'm going to make this one into a roasted mushroom English pea. And then I'm going to make this one just into a straight up Parmesan risotto. So I'm at the point now where I'm ready to go on that. And so this one is for the mushrooms. I've already pre-roasted my mushrooms. So I'm just going to mount these into there. And then one of the things that I love, and I actually learned this from Chef Gordon Ramsay. For years, I spent hours and days and months cleaning peas and thousands of pounds of them. And one day I was watching one of his shows and he was talking about how good English peas are at freezing. And so these are actually a freezer. Now, I do love fresh English peas, but at the end of the day, frozen English peas you can absolutely get away with, and most people would never be able to tell the difference. So I'm going to actually mount in just some of my peas here. Now, there's another important part of this. This is a pretty classic restaurant trick. I don't want to say trick, but I'm going to mount my cheese in. And I'm going to get everything a pretty good stir. Now, this is the ultimate in secret right here. A knuckle of butter. Have it prepared. Then we're going to take a wee bit of cream. We're going to mount cream right into there.
Is that heavy cream or is that sour cream? Or
that's heavy cream. So yes. You know, we don't go through a ton of cream here at the house, so I generally freeze it. And so that's some stuff that was frozen. And so you can freeze any cream above 35% or 40% butter fat. So as I'm mounting this together, my cheese is melting. You can see it's all coming together. I'm going to fold it together. The cheese is starting to melt. I'm going to mount just a touch more creams, just like that. We're going to keep folding that together until basically I want my risotto to, I want it to flow like lava. And so I want it to hold a little bit of its shape, but at the same time, I want it to be able to, I want it to hold its shape, but I want it to be able to be liquid. Not liquid, but lava-like. So I'm going to mount all this together. Then, as my finishing agent, so you can kind of see the way it's holding together, right? The cheese is holding it together. It's kind of barely able to hold its shape. It's starting to flow like lava. And at the very end, I mount a knuckle of butter. So what that's going to do is this is cold butter. And I'm going to fold all this together.
Niall, is it important that the butter be cold and not room temperature?
Say again?
Is it important that the butter is cold and not room temperature?
Yeah, so basically what I'm trying to do right now with that little bit of butter is I'm imparting a little bit more fat, but then also that cold butter is cooling the temp, it's slowing the temperature. So it's slowing the cooking process. Because just before I plate it, I kind of want it to slow down a little bit because I don't want it to be overcooked by the time it gets to my guests. So I'm just going to take a little. Wow, we're really good. And then just a touch of salt. And then when I take it to plate, like I said, I want it to be able to flow like lava. I want it to lightly hold its shape, but I want it to be able to move on its own. So this is this one. I'm going to turn it back over. I'm going to do the Parmesan risotto now. And why don't we turn it back over to you, Madeline, and then I'll finish out with some garnishes and some scallops and that jazz.
I do have one question for you, Chef.
Sure.
They're asking what best way to roast the mushrooms and what variety you recommend.
I was just, I mean, that's so. One of the things that I can't stress enough is when we were in school, we were given multiple choice tests. The beautiful thing about cooking is there aren't really any rules like that. So imagine what your favorite mushroom is and then use that mushroom. So if you love portobellos, you could use Morel mushrooms. I mean, if you really want to make a treat for, you know, your guests that come over, I mean, Morel mushrooms, right? That would be, this is a, oh yeah, I just whipped together a Morel mushroom risotto. And basically they would be asking to come back for another dinner, right? Or chanterelles, or porcinis, or, I mean, there's a million different, truffle. Truffle is amazing for risotto. It's like the perfect, so imagine what your favorite mushroom is. So the way that I roasted mine is that I slice them, a little bit of oil in the pan. I get a pretty good sear on them. Then I melt butter into them, salt, pepper, and then continue them in the pan until I get kind of like almost a sear like what I'm looking for. And the water has kind of escaped from them. And then I put them onto a sheet pan and cool them. So it's a lot of the processes are very similar. Does that answer it? It's good.
You can't go wrong with Morels. That's for sure.
Right? Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and take a lemon and give it the, what do we got going on? This is a asparagus pea Parmesan risotto. And, you know, and I never really thought very much about risotto. It's not something I grew up with. I mean, every now and then we would go out to an Italian restaurant and my mom loves it and she would always order it. And I was like, where's the pizza? But the thing that is so fun about it is that there's so many different combinations you can do with it. Like what Niall's doing, what we're doing, what I'm doing here, you know, with the butternut squash risotto you guys do at the Firefly. You know, you can do, add a little sweet element into it. Like you can chop up apples, put in apples with your butternut squash risotto. I've never done a dessert risotto, but I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that. You know, if you did something, maybe instead of chicken stock, maybe if you did it with milk and sugar and apples and caramel and chocolate, why not? Have you ever done a sweet risotto before? To me, it kind of sounds like, you know, like coconut rice or something. Niall, have you ever done a dessert risotto?
I'm so sorry, my hood was on, and when that tone is going, I can't hear anything. What was it?
Sorry. Have you ever done a dessert risotto with the sweet and sugar with milk or coconut or?
Yeah, there's a really good Thai dessert that's actually made with rice. It's made with jasmine and coconut milk, and then they use mangoes and papaya. It's like a Thai sweet rice. It's really, really quite good, and it's a dessert that's pretty common in Thai cooking.
That sounds amazing.
I gotta be honest though, I've never done it. So
yeah, when Jerry and I were first married, I would make rice as a side for a coq au vin or something like that, just white rice. And the girls, his daughters, would always put honey on their rice. And I'm like, that's for coq au vin. What are you doing? That's for chicken fricassee. It's like, and then Carver would always put soy sauce on it. So we'd have chicken fricassee, something French, and honey and soy sauce. But it's like, you know, you just got to meet people where they are. It's okay.
Absolutely. You know, the thing is it's interesting, you know, that's what I've always loved about cooking is, I mean, you can just bring so much of yourself into your food, and then it's a really interesting way to meet people.
Absolutely.
When we do our special tastings, we do muses, and usually it's something over the last 6 months we've been just kind of working or thinking about, and it's just like a way to kind of introduce it to our guests, which is nice. So I have my other risotto here, and I was going to go plain Parmesan risotto, but then I also remembered it's really, really difficult for me just to order scallops from Maine. So I just had a birthday. I just turned 27. Hey,
happy birthday!
Yes, thank you.
Nice.
Thank you. Actually, 45. So when I did, I ordered 4 lobsters. Because I haven't had Maine lobster in a long time. So my wife, myself, my daughter, and my mother-in-law, I made lobster stew. And so whenever I make lobster stew, I poach the lobsters and cook the shells, and I always make a stock out of it. So I had some of this lobster stock. So I'm actually going to just take a little bit of this. I just want to show you how versatile, once you get the risotto to this point, once you have it there and you have, you know, all of the consistency and everything else, how easy it is to incorporate other flavors into it. So basically, this is just a little bit of that lobster stock. And so I'm just going to warm that back up. Actually, it's already there. It's perfect. Just like that. And I was over at Firefly and I grabbed some more chives this morning too. So I'm going to throw a little chive into it.
Ooh. Now, while you're doing that, I went ahead and put in about 2 tablespoons of cold butter and mixed it in with this risotto and the zest of a lemon. And now I'm going to go ahead and juice that lemon into the risotto and add probably about 3/4 cup of freshly grated Parmesan cheese.
Beautiful.
And then that really gives it an extra creamy bit. And I love your description of how it's lava-like.
Right? Yeah, because you don't, it shouldn't really hold its shape, but it should be trying to.
Yeah, yeah. Another important thing too, I think, when you're picking your chicken stock is to make sure that it's a low sodium chicken stock, because this is a huge process of reducing and reducing and reducing. And whenever you're reducing a liquid, you're intensifying the flavor, so that if you have a chicken stock that is super salty, your risotto is going to be very salty.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, this looks so good. You know what, Niall? I think I'm going to, adding that cream just sounded amazing. I might have to try that.
Yeah, you know, it's. I don't want to say. I don't want to say it's a cheat, but it kind of is. I mean, it definitely. It really takes the creaminess of the risotto to another level, obviously, because you're imparting a bit more fat. And you know, I don't know. I don't know if it's a cheat if it just makes it that much better. So, so yeah. What I'm gonna do real quick. So I've got my scallops. They are rested perfectly. I'm gonna throw them into a bowl. And you know, because I've been cooking on my stovetop, everything is warm up here. And so I'm just gonna set my scallops up here while I get prepped in order to finish up with some garnishes. This morning I was at Firefly, and the nasturtiums are going crazy. They're just these beautiful flowers. The whole plant is edible, but the leaves are really nice. And so I'm gonna actually take, I got a little pile of nasturtiums. This wasn't on anybody's, ingredient list or anything like that, but it's okay. Just remember, like, one of the things that I always like to do is garnish with flavors that are gonna make the dish that much better. So these are nasturtium leaves, and then I also have some basil leaves here. And what we're gonna do is, we have all these leaves kind of tied together. We're gonna roll these leaves. And so what this process is called is chiffonade. And so we're gonna roll these up, and then we're gonna take our knife, and it's just gonna cut everything into strands.
Do you think everybody can cut that fast, Chef?
What's that?
Do you think everybody can cut that fast?
Yes, it just takes time and practice.
Lots and lots and lots of practice.
Lots and lots of practice. And so I'm actually gonna mix these. I'm gonna throw a little tomato in here. I've got this great round pond that actually makes wine. They also have a division that makes olive oil. And so this is kind of like a raw olive oil. It's got garlic in it and a little bit of olive oil. So we're just gonna add just a touch of that. And then while we're at it, just a bit of apple cider vinegar. I don't know if anybody's ever used this Bragg's stuff before, but they make really, really good vinegars and foods and dressings and things like that. So I'm just gonna season this just a touch. Maybe just a bit more. And that should be good. All right, so I'm gonna take all my ingredients over to finish my plate. So as you can see, the risotto, you know, it's barely able to hold its shape, which is good. That's kind of what we're looking for. We're gonna take the scallops. I'm just gonna plate them.
Very nice.
On top of the peat, and then we also have our brown butter sage.
My favorite.
It's nice, so crispy.
And
then
love it.
I'm gonna take just a little bit of the oil that I had left over from that. Just a little bit.
Nice.
And just kind of throw it over the top.
That really,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that really brings all those flavors together when you can take that oil from the pan and the pan drippings. I mean, that's just, you don't really think about it, but it's right there.
Right. So I'm actually going to take so I'm going to pull the petals. I've got this great mixture of tomatoes, nasturtium leaves, basil, and so I'm going to take some petals of the nasturtiums also. Just throw it in there for a little color. Now, just remember that nasturtiums have a very peppery type flavor, almost like arugula, really. So it's very zippy, but it's going to balance really well with a bit of vinegar I have and the olive oil that I have in here. So we're just going to throw that together and then bring it over to the plate.
Madeline, I see risotto and it's looking really good.
Excellent. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. I hope everybody, if anybody's cooking alongside us, oh my gosh, I just got a message from somebody saying it smells amazing, garnished with fresh dill. I mean, it's like, yeah, share your pictures in the chat if that's at all possible. But Niall, you and I were thinking along the same lines. I've got some lemon thyme in the garden, and any time I've got regular thyme and lemon thyme, and anytime I'm cooking with lemon, I love to pull out that lemon thyme. It just really gives a nice little zip to whatever you're doing.
Yeah, there's a perfect amount of acidity in it. It comes out so nice. So I'm gonna finish mine. I've got a couple of things actually. A lot of times, sometimes we'll add bacon to this also. So if you just cook the bacon and crispy, you can also mount it to it. One of the things that I also like to do is salt. So there's so much salt out there. And what I'm going to use is fleur de salt. So this is fleur de salt from Guatemala, actually. And so it's kind of crusty. I mean, it's not crusty, but it's a larger salt. And so when you bite into it, you'll actually get a little crunch from the salt. So we're just going to finish it with just a touch of salt.
Nice. Very nice.
Just a bit of pepper over this stuff. That's risotto.
Excellent. Excellent idea. I'm going to add some pepper to mine too.
I feel like we need to do a little taste test, you know, to prove that you really made a good dish.
A virtual
great
taste
idea,
test.
Katie.
Yes, mostly so I can dream about it and pretend like I'm eating it too.
That is really good. You know, it's,
you
can tell that the rice is a little firm and it's creamy. It's got a bright acidic note from the lemon and the Parmesan, and it's a little herbal with I love it. Now, which one are you going to try first?
Well, you know what? I got to tell you, I'm going to pass the tasting over to the woman that inspires me the most. She's had such an impact on my cooking career, and I value her opinion almost so much more than mine sometimes. So I'm going to let her jump in and take a bite and let me know how it is. And she's got my favorite t-shirt on. I have to say this all the time because everyone goes, can I speak to Neil? Or they call me Niles. And so we made a t-shirt that says, Nile, like the river, only spelled differently.
This was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Which one are you going for, Kristie? Which one is it?
I'm going for the tomato one first. It's unbelievable. This time of year is one of my favorite times when the garden is starting to come in strong and things are starting to come into the farm. It's actually been an amazing growing season this year, particularly compared to last year, which was just a deluge. That's incredible, Niall.
Oh, good.
And then he knows how much I love peas. I'll put peas in anything. There's actually a story of when he was courting me. Just to give you an idea of my cooking skills, he caught me one morning eating peas out of a can, because that was about as far as I could get in the kitchen.
That is priceless. When Jerry and I were first dating, And if anybody goes on my blog, I've got that story on there with this risotto recipe, but I thought it would be very impressive to make Jerry risotto for our picnic. And why I thought making risotto for a picnic was a good idea, I have no idea, but I just thought it was, you know, the thing to do. And one of the things I was using to keep the chicken stock and the wine hot was I had it in a kettle and had it boiling in the kettle. And there's a little screen in the spout of the kettle that's supposed to keep the water from overflowing. And I didn't know that that was broken. So I turned my back, and literally a foot and a half of scalding hot chicken broth was going all over my kitchen, and I didn't have a landline. I only had my cell phone, and it was literally fountaining right on top of my cell phone, which of course was dead. It was dead. And there was chicken broth all over the floor. There was a waterfall, and I ended up being like a half hour, 45 minutes late to our picnic, and Jerry had driven 2 hours to be there. And if you guys know my husband, he is early to everything. So he had been waiting on me for almost an hour. And I got there. We did have risotto. It wasn't near as good as this at all. And we still continued to date. And next week is our 12-year wedding anniversary.
Woohoo!
Wow.
Woo! Can you believe that? I mean, my gosh. And you had your reception at Firefly after the lake flooded. And it's amazing, you know, just looking back on that. And your son was just little, and like we didn't even have kids back then. It's been quite a journey, and we want to first of all thank everyone for being here today, and we want to thank you for your patience as we try to navigate the challenges of COVID. It changes every day. We still don't really understand what's happening with phase 3, and we're trying to figure out when phase 4 is going to happen. We'll have some more news this week as we try to figure this out. So we miss you all so much. We can't wait to have everyone back in Firefly. We just want to make sure that we can do it safely and in a way that takes care of our team and our business in the process. So thank you all for your patience and support.
Yeah.
And this dish was out of this world.
Yeah. If anybody has any questions, you can email, post, or.
Yep. So if anybody has any questions, I just shared my email in the chat. So it's katie@ffgirl.com. And then Madeline, I did actually share in the chat the link to your picnic risotto that you, so people will have the full story. But yes, again, if anybody has questions or requests for future classes, they can absolutely email me at katie@ffgirl.com. I also am the person that either messaged you or emailed you with the information this morning. And we hope to do another cooking class coming up again soon. We're really enjoying these.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for your help, and thank you all so much for being here today. We hope that we get to see you soon in person at Firefly.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank
I'll see you
you.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.